pollsters are still on their tirade saying that the conservatives are now just 1 point ahead of the liberals according to Nanos, and other pollsters saying that the conservatives and liberals are neck and neck, when just 2 weeks ago they were such a discrepancy between the two. It was unbelievably unbelievable, basically, that they could ever be at this position that they are now. But the real question is how accurate are these polls? So according to Nanos, all of a sudden the conservatives dropped and the liberals rose up, meaning that some of the liberals came from some of the liberal polling numbers were, they pouched off a little bit from the conservatives and a tiny bit from the NDP. As you see, the NDP also dropped down in numbers as well. But let's see what other polls have to say. Here we have Ipsos saying that supposedly the liberals are now leading in front of the conservatives. While, once again, the question comes into light is actually how do all these pollsters conduct their research? It seems very odd that, you know, I mean, I look through here, I can't find the methodology at all. If I just off the surface level, maybe if I go into the report, maybe I can find it. But from the surface level view, which is going to be presented to the public, it doesn't seem understandable where they could get these numbers from. Okay? Now, I wasn't asked about, polling. And my whole entire life, nobody of Ipsos or Nanos or any one of these sorts of people have came to ask me what the polling numbers are. I don't think they've come to ask other people as well. Many people probably have never even heard it from these polls. So how are they an accurate representation of what the Canadian populace is thinking? And that's an actual question nowadays: is are polls accurate considering the media, the social media environment that we live in, where everything is so volatile? And how can you understand that and accurately give a number that is, you know, realistic of the actual voting population, not just of your sample size that you have? We go to another uh, pollster here. I think this was Angus Reid. So here's what I'm saying again. Now, many people don't like the politicians in the Liberal Party, especially many people don't like Chrystia Freeland, even from within the Liberal Party. March 5th, 2025, here's a poll that came out from Angus Reid where they say that Carney has a wide gap compared to Pierre Poilievre in how they would handle Trump. They're saying Carney leads Pierre Poilievre in that regard in the polls. But they also say then that Chrystia Freeland is somehow more trusted to handle Trump than Poilievre. Now, what we know currently about the Liberal Party vote, that out of 150,000 voters, nearly 130,000 voted for Mark Carney, and Chrystia Freeland barely touched 11,000 votes. So if the Liberal Party's own voters don't trust Chrystia Freeland to such a regard, she was blown out to such an extent that even the pollsters, once again these pollsters, couldn't predict it. How are they able to predict these numbers here? If they're not predicting the liberal leadership race, a vote count, something that was firmly in Mark Carney's hand, but they couldn't predict how much Carney was going to win by or how strong the support was for Carney. How can they predict, in other regards, the support? It seems that maybe their uh, way of conducting polls are flawed, and a small group of informed people who understand how to get their ways into these pollster areas or wherever polls are having an adverse overweighted effect on the polls, and then that is being pushed into the media because they have the uh, advertising of being trusted. And I wanted to see, at least for these guys at Angus Reid, how are their polls conducted. I opened up their more widespread report, like more detailed report, and of course they have a lot of different statistics and whatnot. But here is this small little box I found at this big report right here, a lot of numbers about the methodology. And they say, I'll read word for word here. The Angus Reid Institute conducted an online survey from February 27th to March 3rd, 2025, among representatives of randomized sample of 2005 Canadian adults who are members of Angus Reid Forum. So, there is a special forum online where people can go and register to be part of these polls. So, basically, your sample size is not technically randomized. You're pulling your results from a group of people that registered with your website. I saw that anybody can actually join in on this, anyone here. So if I wanted to, I could get a group of 100 different, conservative people to join in on Angus Reid's forum, and I would register with them, and they would become part of the sample size. It might be randomized, they might not be selected for some polls, but in the grand scheme of things, I could shift the the results of the poll by just flooding it with maybe one side of the political spectrum or another side. So it doesn't seem that it is actually randomized. It seems that it's just something as legitimate as me going on Twitter and saying, how much do you support this candidate or this candidate in this way? And just like Twitter is sometimes, of course, not accurate, these polls are also not accurate in that way. They are weak, they are lazy, and that they don't want to actually go out to the Canadian population and find accurate ways of understanding their true voter sentiment. So I would personally never trust these polls. We've seen in countless times again, we've seen in the Liberal convention just that came and passed, and how they totally missed the mark on how much Mark Carney was going to blow out the other candidates. And also seen in other elections, from the elections in the United States, where the pollsters are notorious for getting the wrong candidate selected. It seems that their ideologies and their own political leanings have a greater effect on the polls and their selection of randomized peoples than actually what they are trying to truly represent. So that's what I'd have to say about the polls. I don't think they're accurate. What do you think? Please let me know down in the comments, and I'd love to hear more